old friends, new friends, and well, really, thank you so much for coming. And yes, before I start, can you please, if you don't mind, just silence your phone? Thank you so much. So it's my greatest pleasure to extend to each and every one of you here tonight a very, very warm welcome to this evening's special program, A Future Without Fear, by our dear senior brother, Mr. Charlie Hall, but we fondly call him Brother Charlie. Well, brothers and sisters, looking back at 2020, there is no doubt that we live in a, what kind of world? We live in a VUCA world. The acronym first coined in the army is now widely used, but the name VUCA is VUCA. It was first coined in the army, but now widely used, widely applied in business, in society. It describes a world which is volatile, uncertain, complex, unambiguous, and what else? Fearful. And so those in business, in army, in society, and nearly everyone have this kind of thoughts about the world. And what do you think would be the feelings of people in the world? What would it be like if they are thinking that the world is volatile, uncertain, ambiguous? So what would be the feelings like? Whether it is real or apparent, definitely some emotions emerged. And surely there is going to be fear because there is also so much threat of nuclear war, natural calamities, violence, economic downturn as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. We also fear, personally, death, pain of sufferings, illnesses, relationships, problems, and yes, we definitely fear the future. I may sound a little bit negative starting, but this is the real world that everybody is experiencing nowadays. And you know, what is the outcome of all this? What is the outcome? All these are robbing us of the joy of living a life to the fullest. So what can we do about this? We don't want to fear, but it is robbing us, whether we like it or not, subtly, unconsciously. So what do we do to overcome all these fears? How can we remain calm and cool and in a state of equanimity in the face of so many challenges and threats? But fear no more, because we have got not really a guru, but I would say a person with experience in fear management. And I have seen Brother Charlie, known him for about 30 years, nearly 30 years. So we are very fortunate to have with us someone who is, I must say, quite fearless, because at a very young age, he already throbbing the world in search of the truth, in search of spirituality. And for a young age to go around the world, staying in ashrams, in places that are unknown, not sure where you are heading to, I would say the person is very fearless. And so we have a very fortunate to have a very experienced person in this topic. And before I talk about him a little bit more, I would first of all like to start the program. I would like to invite Mr. Pui Ching Fat, Brother Pure, who is the coordinator taking care of all the activities in this center, which is the main center, city center in Kuala Lumpur. So Brother Pure, his name is Mr. Pui Ching Fat, but we lovingly, fondly call him Brother Pure. He is the Secretary General of the Brahma Kumaris Malaysia and a very senior member of the Brahma Kumaris Management Foundation. And he coordinates the activities here in the city. He was formerly the principal of a very prominent school in Kuala Lumpur, but now has retired and has been practicing and teaching meditation for nearly 40 years. So without further ado, Brother Pure, may I invite you to come to the front, please? Thank you.
So firstly, thank you to the MC for the evening program, Sister Celia. So respected Brother Charlie all the way from Australia, and respected brothers, sisters, happy Mother's Day, and also happy Raya for those who are celebrating Raya. Raya is still on or not on? They say it's 1 month, huh? They say it's 1 month. But for us, every day is Raya. You're happy, as the Celia was saying, you're happy, you're not affected by the things happening, you're happy, then every day is Raya. Okay, I think this evening is a very, very interesting. We have an interesting guest. You also have an interesting topic. As MC introduced earlier, a future without fear. I think all of us are very, very well experienced in many things, but probably we are not experienced so much on fear. So this evening talk, I think basically we focus on the subject of fear. I think fear, ever since pandemic, I've been hearing many stories, many experiences from the colleague that ever since pandemic, we just recollect how many fears we have collected. So some of us, the aim is to prevent further fears coming in. Some of us sitting here this evening, fear already inside your mind, inside your lives, how to get the fear out. So whatever aim and objective that we have this evening sitting here, I think we are very, very fortunate. We are very lucky. We have a very, very good international speaker. And Brother Charlie, as MC was introduced earlier on. And Brother Charlie is one of the most searched and most, I would say that, profound speaker in the Brahma Kumaris Buddhist Spiritual University. And I think we are very fortunate this evening. All of you are here making time, in spite of after Raya, long weekend, long break. Some of you are working late and rushing up and down. Okay, I think without further ado, on behalf of Brahma Kumaris Malaysia and also on behalf of the upcoming Brahma Kumaris Foundation, we wish all of you have a good evening this evening. And most of all, I'd like to thank our family here. I'd like to thank Charlie for making all the way over here to deliver his wisdom, probably to share the tools, to share the methods on the topic of future without fear. Om Shanti.
Thank you, Brother Pure. Yes, Charlie, Brother Charlie, please, welcome. Dear friends, dear brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, as I said, we are very fortunate to have Brother Charlie with us here. So I would like to introduce him a little bit more. Brother Charlie is the national coordinator and the chairman of the Brahma Kumaris Australia's board of directors. He's also a very active member of the Brahma Kumaris International Coordinating Group. He's responsible for many international projects and the administrative director of the global network of centers, 9,000 centers all over the world. And in his capacity as the chief executive of Brahma Kumaris Australia, he oversees 40 centers, meditation centers, out of which 3 are retreats. I think now 4. They have 1 more added to their portfolio, 4 retreat centers in Australia. Brother Charlie's traveled extensively all over the world and is very much in demand as an international speaker and has conducted numerous forums, seminars, retreats, and workshops in more than 80 countries. Well, I have known Brother Charlie, as I've said, for nearly 30 years, and I must say that I've never seen him once getting angry, upset, or lose his calm. And of course, he has a strong fortress of more than 45 years practicing meditation. And so today we can hear also a bit about the secret of remaining so calm and cool in spite of the many challenges and responsibilities he's holding. Well, he believes that meditation is an extraordinary tool to maintain mental, emotional, and spiritual health in a world increasingly challenged by anxiety, fear, and depression. So, Brother Charlie, again, a very warm welcome and thank you for being with us this evening. Thank you. Om Shanti.
So thank you so much, Celia, and thank you, Pure Bai, and for your very, very warm welcome. And I would also just like to welcome all of you here tonight. I just arrived here yesterday. I've been to this center many times, and I imagine you have also, but it's wonderfully renovated. So it's lovely to be here in this new form of the center. What I would love to do is just share a few of my thoughts, and then there'll be some time for some discussion, some questions. You know, some people say that there's two prime emotions in life, love and fear. I think all of us know how absolutely paralyzing and terrifying fear can be. But I think equally, we've all experienced how life-transforming love can be. And some even say that love is letting go fear. And actually once, maybe 10 or 12 years ago, I was in Melbourne, and one of my friend's mother, she became sick with cancer. And she would describe herself as quite a nervous, fearful type of person. And one day he rang me and he said, actually, my mother's become terminal. She's not going to survive. It'd be nice if you were able to visit her. Can everyone hear okay? It's okay, good. So I said, I'd love to. And I went along to the hospital. And you know how sometimes experiences in life are so, it's like a movie recorded in your intellect. She was staying in a room right at the end of a long passage. And when I went to the door of the room, it was completely dark. There was no lights on. And I just walked in, tippy-toed in so quietly, and I sat down beside her bed. I thought I made no noise whatsoever. And I just sat there for 2 minutes. Then out of the dark, this voice came. It was her voice. And she said to me, Charlie, I love you. And quite frankly, it was so different from her personality to say something like that. And it was almost like she realized, I'm not going to survive long. I may as well let go all my fear and be the person I really want to be in my life. And so in her last few months of her life, she became so incredibly loving. And you know, that was a massive lesson for me in life, how often we have so many fears inside about what people will think, what society will think. And so we hold back our beauty. We often hold back the person I really am. I hold back expressing my love, expressing my feelings, expressing the things I would like to say because I'm afraid of what you might think or what others may give me feedback. And yet, of all the things in my life that I value, it's the experience of love. And I'm sure it's common, because my observation, and in a way I feel a spiritual life is really, I would say, the journey towards the experience of love. And I find when my heart is full of love, I observe myself, because spirituality, you observe your inner life. I observe, I feel very easy, very relaxed and content. And I think my attitude towards others is so much more compassionate and understanding. To me, the most powerful thing in life is a loving heart. You know, a loving heart breaks down barriers between people. A loving heart fills empty hearts. A loving heart, heals hearts in pain. And a loving heart creates such a sweet atmosphere. But let's go right to the other end of the spectrum, to fear. And the millisecond my mind is gripped with fear, adrenaline curses through your system. Your heart begins to palpitate, the stomach churns, the skin, goes all clammy and uncomfortable. And just as love is the seed of so much positive emotion, fear is the seed of so much negative emotion. There's tension, there's anxiety, there's fear, and then I can't relax, I can't sleep, I can't concentrate. This is the effect of fear. But actually, there's a lot of research that has been done, and it's quite fascinating how our emotions affect our physical well-being. And do you know there's a big relationship between your heart and fear? If I was, if someone came running through that door now and said there's a fire in the building, and what would be the first thing that happens before we all run for the exit, so to speak? What's the first thing that happen? Your heart will go boom, 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 boom. And if every single day of life I have fear of a personality in the workplace, or fear of somebody in my home, I have a fear that I might fail, I have a fear that my desires in life won't be fulfilled, so many fears. All these fears are putting pressure on my heart, and my heart is just a little pump. And so at some point, it's going to break down. And this is why really I often feel investment in my spirituality, investment in my well-being, investment in beginning to learn how to manage my fear is such an investment of quality of life, I would say. And unfortunately, we live in a world of fear. It's a reality, isn't it? You heard the whole list that Celia was reading out. We live in a world of fear. And look at what's happening in, Ukraine at the moment. The whole world is watching. The Brahma Kumaris have 8 centers in Ukraine. We're quite regularly in touch with all of them, listening to really what's happening on the ground. But every night we watch the news on the television, and we see so much conflict in our world. In so many parts of our world, the streets aren't safe, even the homes aren't safe, nowhere is safe. But that's like the big picture of life. Each one of us has our own individual sets of fears. And one of the main fears for many of us is public speaking. I don't know, some people love it, but most people don't. And once I read on the internet, there was a little thing, would you prefer to give a talk in public or swim in a tank with sharks? Anyone here prefer to swim with the sharks? No one's admitting to it, but because when we stand in front of people, we have the fear of being judged by people and so many things like that. But also, I remember once I was at a meditation center in Australia. We have 4 beautiful live-in retreat centers. And I was in one near Melbourne, and we were having a discussion. And I was talking to one lady there, very lovely person. And she was so open. She said, when I come close to people, I have a real fear that they may not accept me, that they will reject me. And you know, this is one of the most common fears in life, the fear of being rejected, the fear of not belonging, the fear of not being loved. Even I have a friend who's a concert pianist, and he was telling me that the best piano players in the world no one's ever heard of, classical pianists, because when they come onto a stage, their fear freezes their fingers and they can't play. But he said he's a classical player. He's able to play in front of audiences, but he said there's some much better than me that no one knows about. So just think of the influence of fear, and I could go on and on and on, and you could tell so many of your own experiences about this. But what is fear? What is fear? Fear is an emotion experienced in anticipation of danger, evil, or pain, whether real or imagined. Fear is an emotion experience in anticipation of danger, evil, or pain, whether real or imagined. And you know, in the past, scientists used to believe that fear was genetic, that you inherited it from your parents. But in more recent years, in fact, a long time, they understand that fear is based on your past experience, which is exactly what we understand in spirituality. And once I was sent one of those viral videos, you know how people send you those viral sort of videos on YouTube. Quite frankly, I rarely watch them. But I watched one of a little girl in Calcutta. And this little girl was with a king cobra. She wasn't even old enough to walk. And obviously the poison was taken out of the cobra. But she was sitting on her behind, and the cobra was above her, going at her face like this, boom, boom, boom. And she had a big smile on her face. And after a while, she started to go like this at the cobra. It goes on for a few minutes. And finally, the cobra backs off, and the little girl chasing the cobra. It's an incredible thing to watch. And what's amazing is that little girl has no recorded fear of that, because actually we learned fear. Actually, as parents, we often instill fear in our kids. Be careful of this, don't do this, for good reason often. But then I was once in South Africa, and I was giving a talk in Port Elizabeth, which is a city in South Africa. And somehow this whole subject of fear came up, and a man put up his hand and he said, how much fear is real and how much is imagined? And imagined fear is anxiety. And my answer was, I wouldn't have a clue. And he said, I Googled it. And as you know, Google is God these days. All truth lies on Google. Is that true? I Googled it. And it says around 93% of our fear, research says, is imagined. So just think, out of 20 times you feel anxious, 19 is just the creation of your own mind, imagining into the future. This might happen, that might happen. And because of the uncertainty in this world, anxiety is absolutely going through the roof at the moment. Anxiety is exponential. And many of us here in this room know the feelings of anxiety. And even sometimes we can't sleep at night. Who's had the experience when you feel really tired, you put your head on the pillow, you just need a good sleep, and the mind kicks in? And the worries, the projections into the future. This is anxiety. This is imagined fear. And I think so much of spirituality is deprogramming myself of so many things which I've really collected. And what I want to do tonight is just talk about 3 areas of fears that I think we all experience. Not so much, we're not psychologists here, but we talk from a spiritual perspective. And the first is what I would call physical fears, the fear of the loss of wealth or material things or possessions, the fear of loss of health, old age, illness, sometimes the things like the fear of the dark, you know, the fear of heights, all these sorts of things. And actually at the heart of these fears is the fear of loss. And the ultimate fear for most of us is the fear of loss of my body. That's like the mother of all fears. But along with that, it's not just the fear of the loss of my body, it's the fear of the loss of my reputation, my respect, my image, the identity I've built up in my life, you know, my successes, my achievements. And, you know, sometimes I have this sort of image in my mind that, you know, we're born and what do we say? This is my mum, this is my dad. You know, these are my brothers, these are my sisters. No, this is my city, this is my country. And then as I grow a bit older, this is my career, this is my partner, these are my children, these are my grandchildren. We build up this amazing network. And then in a second we fly, we leave the whole thing. And this is probably the seed of so many of our fears, that we invest in this whole identity for a lifetime, which will change in that quick as we click the fingers. And this is why I would say the first step to a future without fear is to understand the eternal law of life, that there's nothing but change happening in life. And the actual story I love is that life is like a train journey. And you know, when you sit in a train, what happens? The train stops at a station. People hop on the train and people hop off the train. You go to the next station, people hop on and people hop off. And this keeps happening until eventually you hop off the train. The train is life. The reality of all of our lives is people come into your life, people go out of your life. Roles, responsibilities, achievements come into your life and they go out of your life. Material things come into your life and go out of your life. But life keeps going. And wisdom is to really understand this process. But what is constant in all of this change? What is constant? The constant is I, the eternal self. And this is why the second step to a future without fear is to really know and experience who I am. And that life means that I'm the permanent self, but all these temporary things come to me and leave me. And wisdom is to love them, enjoy them, but not attach my heart to them. Is it easy? Is it easy? Everyone's sitting a bit stunned, quiet. No, it's not easy because we've been programmed in such a different way. And what is permanent in all this change is I, the eternal soul. And you know, the way I look at it these days, and I often share this because it's helped me understand that in all of us at this moment, there's 3 personalities living in us. And 2 of them fill me with fear. And 1 of them releases me, begins to release me from fear. And the first personality is what I call the eye of arrogance or the eye of superiority. And this personality takes its whole sense of identity from all the temporary labels of my body. Who am I? You know, I'm a gender, I'm a nationality, I'm a religion, all these. You know what Gandhi once said? Labels are for jars, they aren't for people. But we label ourselves and we label everyone. And when my ego is dominating my inner world, my sense of my temporary self, because what's common to all these labels of gender and nationality and culture is that they're all temporary. And when my ego is ruling my inner system, I compare with others. And I think I am better, I know more, I am right. And when it comes into my feelings, that's when I feel so easily insulted, disrespected, not valued, excluded, sensitive. And you think of the power of all these feelings. They're so strong. And yet what I feel is that when I'm feeling insulted and hurt, no, the false self is ruling my inner system. And the ego and fear have a deep, deep relationship. The more ego, the more fear. Because ego builds up a facade. I build up an image in life, and I'm fearful that people will see through my image and see that I'm not so confident, I'm not as good as I look. Or I put all this pressure on myself to live up to expectations or what I perceive are others' expectations of me. And so when my ego is ruling in my inner system, chronic fearful feelings. But the second I is the powerful I. And this I believe, rules the world at the moment. This is the I of inferiority, the I of lack of self-respect. Perhaps you can call inverted ego. This I also compares with everybody, but starts to think others are better, others know more, others don't love me, others don't value me, others don't respect me. And when my lack of self-respect dominates my inner world, that's when I feel hopeless about myself, inadequate, unworthy, even I would say depressed. And in psychology, depression is like a sadness that my dream in life to be loved and valued and respected hasn't happened. But in spirituality, depression is like a mourning for the loss of my true identity. I'm living my life, but am I really all these temporary labels? Is that really who I am? And in fact, 80% of us believe we're something more than a physical body. So when I'm actually being, I'm under the influence of my lack of self-respect, I have so much fear of not being loved, not being valued, not being included, feeling excluded, all these sorts of things. And so when I think I'm a temporary body, it gives birth to my ego of superiority, my ego of inferiority. The result, mood swings up and down. One day I'm flying and the next day I'm crashing. 1 minute I'm flying and the next minute I'm crashing. The third I is the original I, the soul. The soul is a wonder. Some call it the soul, some call it the spirit, some call it the Atma. The Atma means three things. I, the living, the dweller in the costume. I, the living being, the dweller, the actor wearing this temporary bodily costume. And you know, in science, when they describe a point, they say it exists, but it has no length, breadth, or width. So this is the soul. The soul is so subtle. I have lived before this body, and I will continue after this body. I, the soul, am eternal, immortal, non-physical. And in a sense, the more I begin to understand I always exist, I start to deprogram so much of my fear. You know, once I had a job in London in the physics department of Imperial College, the University of London. I can't even remember how I got the job, but we were, at that time, they were trying to find the quark, which is the smallest particle in those days. And I was helping them measure in the electron chamber. And I asked the scientists, I said, what is your understanding of the unit of matter, the atom? They said, we believe it's eternal. It always exists. So this body is made up of these little building blocks. And once this body goes, they will go off into other forms. But I, the soul, also always exist. And as I become aware of who I am, then I start to help reduce this fear of loss. So the second type of fears are perhaps what I could call psychological fears. These are like mental fears of change or failure, the emotional fears too of not being loved, rejected. But there's also something called phobias. You know phobias. You know how many phobias there are? How many do you think there are? How many phobias exist? Hundreds. Around, they say, I think around 300. And a phobia is really what sometimes psychology used to call an irrational fear. And there's claustrophobia, which is a fear of a confined space. Agoraphobia, a fear of going out. Aviophobia, a fear of flying. There are so many you can't believe. You know, once I was in the Blue Mountains outside Sydney, and the Brahma Kumaris have a beautiful retreat center. If any of you are ever in Sydney, you must visit. And there was a man coming to do some work there. It's in 130 acres, has a beautiful waterfall. And he was an electrician, a great big Aussie bloke. And he said to me, he was looking at this because it's a World Heritage, UNESCO World Heritage area. He said, such a beautiful place, but I wouldn't want to live here. I thought, well, that's strange. Why? He said, spiders. He said, I'm an arachnophobiac. Took me a long while to learn that word. An arachnophobiac has a phobia of spiders. And yet, all these fears are not irrational. All my fears are directly connected to past experiences. They're directly connected to past experiences. And actually, if I'm bitten by a dog as a child, and it was really a major incident, for the rest of my life, when I see a dog, I'm wary. If as a child, I don't really feel loved, for the rest of my life, when I come into a relationship, I have the fear of not being loved and accepted. So what's this saying? The past is overlaying, the past experiences are overlaying and making me fearful in the present. And this is why when we go deep into the soul is actually an extraordinary thing because it's an overname for three aspects of consciousness. The first is the mind, the second is the intellect, and the third is the subconscious. The mind is actually like a screen, like this screen here. Oh, I didn't realize it's big. And so your mind gets all the data of life. What you see, what you hear is thrown up on the screen of your mind. Your intellect is assessing that data. Your intellect, you know that part of you, even as I'm speaking now, there's actually a part of you saying, I agree with that, I don't agree with that, I like this, I don't like that. You're constantly assessing. And then you make a decision, you do an action, and every action is recorded in your subconscious. Who am I? I am actually the sum total of all my past experiences. You're sitting peacefully here in this room, but in your memory track, in your subconscious, you carry this perfect record of your past. And recorded in that are all your experiences and your experiences of fear as well. Why do we meditate? Why do we meditate? Because when we meditate, we experience peace in the present. But ultimately, the aim is to clear the unfinished story in my subconscious so that I start to clear that past backlog of all the fears that are like shadows from the past overlaying on the present, or my experiences are influencing how I behave now. And sometimes, people's past experiences, not just in this life, but even past lives, overlay and affect the present. Once one lady came to our center and she had 4 children. And she said to me, in Australia, they always take little children for swimming lessons, sometimes even before they walk, because all the cities are on the water and it's for safety, really. And she said, 3 of the children took to water like a duck. Most children do. But one of them put her near water, she'd get a bit nervous, but put her head under the water, she'd have a panic attack, complete panic attack. She said, they've got the same parents, they eat the same food, there's everything the same. Because that soul has had an experience with water in a past life that's overlaying and influencing how she experiences life in the present. Some people find it so hard to express their opinion. Others, if you ask their opinion, you'll get it straight in your face. But other people are very fearful. It's so difficult, often because they've lived in a culture in the past where it's not encouraged to share your opinion. So there's so many reasons why we behave like we do and why we have certain fears and so on. So in this journey to really, I would say, dealing with fear, first, I need to understand there's nothing but change going on. Second, that, what is constant in all this change is I, the eternal soul. I always exist. Third, I need to understand that I, the soul, have been on a journey. I've collected experiences in my subconscious. Some of them are fearful, and they overlay and affect the way I behave today, the way I respond to life today. And I would even say, fourth, we need, for a future without fear, to really deal with fear in relationships, if I can say that. Because sometimes we have fear of authority figures in our lives. We have a fear of their decisions, or we have a fear of certain personalities and their opinions. And, that is actually a big thing for many of us. And one thing that's really helped me is when I look beyond the body and meet the other as a soul. Because when I see the soul, I don't have a vision of superiority or inferiority. It's a vision of equality. Because when I see someone's body, almost instantly I compare and I position myself unconsciously even superior or inferior. But when I see the soul, actually, even though all these bodies are different, we are actually souls sitting in the forehead. And when I meet the soul, I actually begin to have this real sense of connection. And one of the things which I experience more and more in my life, that communication and relationship is subtle. Actually, 80 to 90% of the effect of your communication is nonverbal. And so that's your face and your vibrations. And so when you meet the other as a soul, and you meet the other with these elevated thoughts and feelings, people get a good feeling from me. They feel safe with me too. And so there's physical fears, there's psychological fears, and maybe I could even call them like spiritual ones too. Fear of the unknown, fear of God, fear of my own past, mistakes I've made or things I've done, which I'm afraid will come back in front of me once again. And one of the beautiful things about spirituality is this deep and incredibly true law of karma, that as you do, so you reap. You know, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. The law of cause and effect. And that really means that if I transgress universal laws, I fear the repercussions of them. I build fear into my life. In other words, if I cheat, if I'm dishonest and so on, in the present, it fulfills my desires. But in the long term, I build a lot of fear in my life. And you know, once I was conducting a seminar in a country for government officials, and it was 3 days. And on the last day, one man said, "Can I speak to you?" And he said, I said, "Sure." And he said, "You know, I'm full of fear. I'm so afraid." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because I didn't earn much money and I wanted my children to be educated in the UK, in England. So I've taken bribes all my working life." And you know what he said? "I've given a good life to my children, but I've ruined my own life." He said, "I have so much fear that my community will know that I was cheating." And that's where I would say the next step to a future without fear is to live an honest life, to live according to my truth and values. You can sleep peacefully at night. When you transgress your truth, sometimes our desires are so strong for material things, temporary material, superficial things, we transgress our values and our principles. And what happens is we find it hard to sleep at night when we do. And this is why I would say that a future without fear, there's really 3 main principles, I would say, spiritually. To develop a loving relationship with myself as a soul. And really, I can say that when I start to become soul conscious, you know, many times when people think about meditation, we think, what is the aim of meditation? The aim of meditation is to be peaceful. Actually, that's the result. The aim of meditation is to know and experience who I am. And the automatic byproduct is I will feel so calm. I just have to learn how to create the awareness of who I am. And even my mind, even the organs of the body relax and cool down. First, I develop a loving relationship with myself as a soul. Secondly, a loving relationship with others as souls too. And thirdly, a loving relationship with God. And really the highest union of the human mind is to look through the eye of the mind and see God as light and connect myself with that being. And my understanding, my experience is that just as I'm a soul, and I'm a soul that sits here and expresses through this body. I can speak, I can hear, I can see, but actually I'm the tiny soul. God is a soul too, a conscious living being, but a soul without a body. And this is why we sit to meditate and we let go the consciousness of my body and I actually communicate by thought. You do this all the time. as you've been sitting here while I've been speaking, people keep popping in your mind. Is that right? Even as I'm speaking. And you often think, oh, I'm thinking of them, but actually you've received a thought message. How many times have you thought of someone, then your phone rings? It happens to all of us, right? Because a thought is instant. Light travels at 186,000 miles a second. Thoughts are instant. If someone in London thinks of you, you're going to pick it up the millisecond they think of you. So your thoughts are communicating. In the same way, you are able to become the soul and connect directly and communicate with the Supreme Soul. And it's like plugging yourself into a source that is unlimited in purity, peace, love, power, joy. And really, I think today, the more I base my life on that which is permanent, who am I? Who is the divine? And even others, then it's like I build my life on something solid, because this uncertain world is changing and it's actually going to change faster. Change is going to even be faster than it is now. And unless I have a sense of stability and security, I can't get it from anything outside, because it will all change. It's the law of life. But you build it inside. This is spirituality, building a solid platform. And when you do, it's like you become more and more fearless, because I always exist and this relationship is always there, no matter how much other things begin to change around me. And this is really spirituality, I think, laying a platform on that which always exists. Because when you look at life, it's very naive the way we design our lives. We invest in everything temporary and hope it will become permanent, but it will never become permanent. Life is the train. All of it will come and go. And once I understand this principle and I lay a solid foundation, really, I can let go a lot of fear in my life. Anyway, I have been going on for quite a long time, probably too long. But if there's anyone who would like to just ask a question, make a comment, we have a few moments for some questions and discussion. Please feel free.
Yeah, and the brother will come over with the mic. So for those who are on Zoom, because the number of them are online listening to this talk, or you can come over here, Brother Ajin.
It's great to see you, Charlie, again. After maybe 15, 20 years, we had a retreat near KL. I'm forgetting which year was that. It was 3 days retreat.
That's right.
You're looking
yes.
same, actually. No change. Like the eternal person, right? Beautiful to see you. Thank you for your talk. As always, wonderful. I've been thinking, it's really, spiritual journey is wonderful, think that everyone is beautiful, God is in everybody, and we think the whole world is so beautiful. What I've experienced in 15, 20 years, I purchased some properties and I have made some financial losses, trusting the people, because I thought it's my weakness, judgment, always trust the other person. So I never feared that, because I made repeated mistakes many times. But now I was thinking recently, what is it? What is the defect in me? What is the weakness in me? Or there is something there. Why does it happen? Is it that I can't isolate from the situation?
I don't know whether, personally, I believe we have to be trusting. I think we have to be. Because if you approach most relationships with mistrust, what's life going to be like? But we have to be trusting with a sort of common sense of the reality of the world at the moment. Unfortunately, our world is what can we say? Sometimes I think there's 7.9 billion human beings, 195 countries, 6,500 spoken languages, 4,500 religions. What an amazing world we're living in. But unfortunately, I would say all the human souls have lost their power. Why? Because this first relationship, me with me, is so dysfunctional. And that's when I have an unhealthy relationship with myself, which most human beings do. It spills out into families, it spills out into the world, and it spills into business. So unfortunately, people don't realize they're so innocent. I prefer to use that word than ignorant. But when I cheat somebody, it's just going to come back to me at some point. That is the ultimate ignorance. I don't understand the law of karma. And it happens. I've seen it on so many occasions. It may take some years. Sometimes the cheating, I get an instant reward or effect, but sometimes a long-term effect. It's like anger. When you get angry, how do you feel in the moment? It's a terrible feeling, right? You feel horrible inside. But everyone who watches you get angry takes sort of like a digital photograph in their mind. And when you come in front of them, they're like, well, so that behavior in the present affects the future. But another way of looking at what you just said is that this is the time of settlement. And all of us have our story in our subconscious. And at the moment, all human souls are settling accounts of the past through health, through wealth, through relationships. Sometimes, unfortunately, incredible conflict and differences within families. We all know it. Everyone in this room knows it because it's the time of settlement. And unless I get a context of why there's so much hurt, anger, and bitterness that builds up inside in life, really more than ever, we need to have a spiritual framework to understand me and why the world is like it is at the moment. And even at the top of that, knowing how sometimes dishonest and untrustworthy people can be, to have good wishes and pure feelings, because what I've learned is you can only really have a quality human life when you have good feelings for other people. And easy to say, but I think when you practice a spiritual life and you sow the seeds of good actions, it's an indelibly positive future. You are creating your own destiny. Each one of us has created our own destiny. What is coming in front of us now is the result of the past. But when I do good actions, I'm creating. There's no better investment. I call it blue chip investment in the future. And that's about respecting people, forgiving people, a whole lot of things. Now, probably I've raised about 100 questions like what I just said, but just in case there's someone else who wants to say something.
Thank you so much. It's settlement, not cheated.
It is settlement, yeah. I'll tell you a story. Once I was in London and I met a man who, if you remember in Africa and Uganda, who remembers Idi Amin? He was and he marched a lot of the non-Ugandans to the border one night. And this man was living in Uganda most of his life. He was a multimillionaire and he said, I crossed the border. Some soldiers marched me over the border with a few dollars in my pocket. He said, I was broken. I was broken. I spent a whole life building up this business and nothing. And he said he got to London in this state of depression. And someone took him along to a meditation center and he learned to meditate. And he said, I found peace and I found a relationship with God. He said, I had to lose $10 million to find peace. I would have never gone to a meditation center for the life of me. That was his journey. I had to lose everything to try something different. Isn't life incredible sometimes? But you know, one other thing, I have a friend in Australia who's a palliative care physician dealing with people when they're dying. He always says to me that when people are dying, and he's dealt with thousands and thousands, he said there's two things on their mind. What sort of person was I? Like the account with my own behavior, my own values, and how did I treat other people? And as he said, no one has ever said, I wish I'd made more money. I wish I'd got a bigger title in the business. It's irrelevant. All this stuff that is so relevant when we're alive, so important. When we're dying, it's not important. What's important is actually, how did I live my life? Was I an ethical, moral, good human being? Then you can die with peace. And so sometimes our values get all skewed because of the culture in which we're living. So I'm going on a bit, but maybe if there's one or two little questions, and I'll try to be a bit briefer if anyone would like to ask something.
Looks like everyone's contented.
I hope no one's,
there's one there. Okay.
I was going to say, I hope no one's afraid to ask after this.
Om Shanti Kali. I just want to understand the three faculties of the soul is mind, intellect, and you said subconscious. But they say sanskars and also memory bank. It consists of the past actions, bad, good, and neutral. Is that right?
Yes. Am I still audible? Yes. Yes, the memory is in the intellect. The memory is in the intellect. Now, the subconscious in the Eastern culture in India, they refer to it as a sanskara. And a sanskara is the effect of an action. I do an action and it's recorded in the subconscious as a sanskara. In psychology, they say do something 20 times, it becomes a habit. So we have all these sanskara habits. So we have the habit, if someone behaves in a certain way, I have the habit to get upset, the habit to react. And this is why sometimes your habits are stronger than you. You know, have you ever woken up in the morning and you feel today I'm going to be the sweetest, nicest person. And in 1 minute and 22.2 seconds, you've got upset, you've got angry. And you start to think, who's in control here? It's like, I make a decision, I want to be peaceful, and yet an emotion takes me over. This is the power of my own subconscious. This is like my karmic story. And this is where all my fears live too. My fears are habits recorded in my subconscious that are overlaying and playing on me now. And I'll tell you a strange story, but just to show how this works, how the subconscious. There was one man who I knew in Australia who's like a hypnotherapist. And he said one man came to him who was a huge businessman. And he had to fly to London and New York all the time. But when he was flying, he couldn't go to the toilet. And when you fly for 22 hours, that can be a problem. And there was no rational reason. And then he went to this man, this hypnotherapist. And when he was a young man, he was in the Second World War in a submarine. And in this submarine, once there was whoever was dropping depth charges on top of the submarine. And the captain said to all the men, you can't go to the toilet because they will pick up where we are and they will get bombed. So that was an experience. And so he held himself back. They all did for days, a day or something like that. And so that was an experience. And even sitting in the aeroplane, it's like somehow it was recorded in him. It's a similar shape, you know, the plane. I don't know whether I'm making sense. Am I making sense? It's a bit of a strange story, but he couldn't go to the toilet. But once he heard this, he was okay. I could tell you hundreds and hundreds of stories like that. The experiences of the past overlay and are affecting my life, my relationships definitely, and my performance in the workplace now. Okay, so, the questions are coming now.
Just one more, last one, okay? Yeah, you, it's a mic. Okay, you just say, I can repeat it for those on Zoom. Yeah.
If you just say and we can repeat it, yeah. If you take your mask off, it's a bit easier to hear.
Okay, for those on Zoom, one brother is asking that, is saying that, commenting that fear is natural and sometimes it could even be something to trigger a solution, and is asking whether that is correct or not. Am I right, brother? Yeah, thank you.
Yes, it has become natural now. And, you know, the flight or fight syndrome sometimes is the, you know, what science talks that fear helps us survive fundamentally in this world. So perhaps you could say there is a positive side to fear, but I would say most of fear is negative. And the emotion of fear, we all know when you feel it, you don't feel uplifted. You don't feel benefited in that way. And mostly, and all the data says it has detrimental effects on my health, on my mental health, and my relationships as well. So there is, in that way, like you say, sort of sometimes it warns me of certain things that I need to be careful about. But personally, I would say that generally fear is an emotion that's detrimental to quality of life. Okay. So.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Brother Charlie, for that very amazing talk. I myself have personally benefited. A couple of points that I'm taking back is that on the one side, love is the seed of all positive emotions, just as that, love. And similarly, fear is also the seed of many negative emotions. And 93% of fear are imagined. And imagined fear is anxiety. So, but there is the method that Brother Charlie has asked us to do, definitely meditation, because through meditation, you can experience peace at that very moment. But what is more important is then plug into that unlimited resource, that source of unlimited peace and love and happiness and power, which will help us to whatever fear that is in the subconscious, to help us slowly overcome that. And 3 principles that he has given us, which is very, very useful, is that first is that loving relationship with I, the soul, and loving relationship with others as a soul, and most important, loving relationship with God. Again, the connection with God will help us to overcome many, many fears. And I myself must share with you that I had fear of heights. I wouldn't dare to climb up to change the light bulb. But now, after meditation, I have no fear. I could easily do that job, put a ladder up, even nobody is helping me. I could dare to go up. So, but don't ask me for this job, some other reasons. But anyway, it will be very useful. So thank you so much. Let us put our hands together to say big thank you to Brother Charlie for the very insightful and powerful talk tonight. And so to also practically enable us to do some meditation, Brother Charlie will guide us through a silent reflection. He will share a few thoughts to guide us. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy the next session. Thank you.
Just for a few moments, if we can put down our devices, our phones, and just follow the thoughts suggested with the aim to experience the journey to dealing with fear is the journey to experiencing my permanent self. Just visualize yourself as the soul. Create an image in your mind of the soul as a tiny spark of life energy sitting in the center of the forehead, in the front of the brain. Just hold this image that I, the soul, am permanent. Everything around me is temporary. I enjoy it. I engage with it. I have loving relationships. But I learn not to attach my heart. Because when I attach my heart, I build the fear of loss into my life. How am I able to live without attaching my heart? It's when I experience the one relationship that's permanent, the relationship with the divine, the relationship with God. Just visualize the form of God as a beautiful, radiant point, emanating love, peace, and power. And let your mind rest on this unlimited source. This relationship is only a thought away. When I build a foundation of my life as the permanent self, with the lover of the soul, the Supreme Being, I can feel stable. And no matter how much this world changes around me, my foundation is stable. And the more I know and experience who I am and who I belong to, I will create a future with less fear. Om Shanti. Thank you.
Charlie, so dear brothers and sisters, we have come to the end of the program for this evening. So thank you very much for joining us this evening and your alert participation. And before we adjourn for some light refreshments, please allow me to make a few announcements. I'm sure many of you already know who we are, the Brahma Kumaris, but there are quite a number of new friends this evening. So very warm welcome to you as well. So, well, the Brahma Kumaris is a global non-governmental and non-profit organization that spans the 5 continents with about 9,000 centers in over 100 countries or more. And in Malaysia here, we have more than 50 centers and sub-centers. The Brahma Kumaris encourages individuals to develop positive values through spiritual understanding and meditation. And the Brahma Kumaris, we are affiliated to the United Nations as a non-governmental organization and NGO, holding a consultative status with UNICEF and with ECOSOC, the Department of Economic and Social Council of the United Nations. So all activities are offered free of charge as a service to the community. And we are involved in a wide range of activities that involves the spiritual application of values. For example, on an international level, we have coordinated projects such as Living Values, Million of Minutes of Peace, and Living Values for a Better World. And nationally, we have organized seminar, retreats, and public talks like this, and courses on inner leadership, stress-free thinking, stress-free living, positive thinking, anger management, and maybe fear management next time. Yeah. And so we also conduct the Raja Yoga, the meditation course that Brother Charlie was talking about, on a regular basis. So the course starts every Monday at 7:30 p.m. in all the centers in Malaysia and also, I believe, in the world. So as a follow-up of this program, we have arranged a workshop on parenting. I think the flyer, they can show it on the screen. A workshop on parenting next Sunday, not this Sunday, but coming Sunday on the 22nd of May, 10:30 to 1 p.m. There are limited seats, and so please do register. Also a very good speaker locally. And also, as you came just now, as you were registering for this program, you have a little table there with books, but the bookshop is inside actually. So if you want to purchase any literature or any souvenir, please do visit that book sale or go into the bookshop to have a look. Last but not least, before you leave for light refreshments, please do collect. Charlie Bai, would you like to give a blessing and Toli? Yeah. So may I invite you to come, brother? Don't mind to bring a chair that's closer, so you don't have to go up the steps to take the Toli good wish card and blessings from Brother Charlie. So you may come in a row, and then as you go out from that door, the sisters there will guide you to have a light meal. Okay, so thank you very much again for coming by this evening to join us, in spite the fact that it is a working day. Thank you. Om Shanti, and hope to see all of you again very soon. Another chair for her.
100,000 angels by your side. There's 100,000 angels by your side. Do you